When did a family secret break your moral compass? I've been staring at this screen for the better part of an hour, the cursor blinking, mocking me. Usually I am the one dishing out advice, the steady hand in the storm, but right now I am adrift. My mind keeps replaying the moment I saw it, that email, casual as a grocery list but carrying the weight of a nuclear secret. It wasn't meant for my eyes, not in a million years, but there it was, sitting in the open folder on a shared drive, outlining a plan that would betray Virginia, my late wife's sister, and frankly, jeopardize everything we've held sacred. The moral compass I've tried to navigate by my entire life feels like a broken thing, spinning wildly between loyalty, legality, and the suffocating pressure of an unspoken family pact. I'm Stephen Cox, 65M, or just Stephen to most, a retired history professor who thought his biggest challenge these days would be perfecting his sourdough starter or finally finishing that biography of Theodore Roosevelt. Life had other plans, as it always does. My late wife Alina, bless her heart, always said I had a tendency to overthink things, to see all sides of an issue until the issue itself became a blurred mess of moral relativism. She was usually right. But this feels less like overthinking and more like standing on the edge of a very deep, very cold lake. The family cottage is where this whole mess is centered. It's not just a cottage, it's a repository of generations, a place where the scent of pine and old wood somehow embodies every memory of childhood summers, scraped knees, first crushes, and profound losses. It belonged to Virginia's 72F parents, then to her and Alina jointly. When Alina passed 5 years ago, it became Virginia's and by extension mine and spirit, a shared responsibility. Virginia, for all her sharp wit and often reluctant leadership within the family, has always been the keeper of that flame. She's meticulous about the cottage, almost obsessively so, from the angle of the curtains to the specific brand of coffee served. She can be formidable, even intimidating, but underneath it all she carries a deep, quiet love for the place, a love I understand implicitly. This past May, Virginia had decided it was time for a major renovation. The plumbing was failing, the roof leaked in 3 different spots, and the foundation, well, let's just say it had seen better centuries. She had put out feelers to various contractors, gotten estimates, and had been agonizing over the sheer cost. That's where Amber Patel, 50F, came in. Amber is a colleague of Virginia's at the nonprofit they both work for, an organization focused on historical preservation. On the surface, Amber is all professionalism and efficiency, impeccably dressed, always smiling, with a knack for navigating tricky bureaucratic waters. She's been with the nonprofit for years, climbing the ranks with a quiet determination that Id always admired. But underneath that polished exterior, Id started to see cracks, or perhaps I just hadn't been looking closely enough before. Virginia, ever the loyalist, had brought Amber into the cottage renovation discussions, given Amber's purported extensive network in construction and her negotiating prowess. Amber even offered to help manage the project, citing her own recent home renovation experience. Virginia, eternally swamped with her nonprofit duties and grieving Alina in her own way, had gratefully accepted. My involvement was supposed to be minimal. I'm good with a hammer and nails, but plumbing diagrams might as well be hieroglyphics to me. I offered to coordinate supplies, keep the pantry stocked for the workers, and generally act as a gopher. It was my way of feeling useful, of contributing to a place that held so much of Alina. We were all up at the cottage last week, a pre-renovation deep clean. Virginia, Amber, and I, along with a couple of younger cousins who were roped in. The air was thick with dust motes dancing in the sunlight, the scent of lemon polish, and the slightly awkward tension of a family dynamic under duress. Virginia, true to form, was barking orders, albeit good-naturedly. "Stephen, darling, the paint cans in the shed need sorting by color. Amber, could you please organize the tools? And for heaven's sake, someone find that missing screwdriver set." Amber was her usual charming self, agreeing to everything, making mental notes on her tablet, offering unsolicited advice about energy-efficient windows and the merits of reclaimed wood. I found myself thinking, she really is quite helpful, isn't she? My introspective learner self, ever the optimist, was already forming theories about how this project could bring everyone closer. It was Tuesday, a sweltering July afternoon. I was back in the city working from my study, trying to make sense of some convoluted historical documents for a piece I was writing. Virginia had asked me to look over a few more contractor bids. She had scanned them and emailed them to me along with a few other documents she had been reviewing. She always overscanned. Her computer was a labyrinth of poorly organized files, and sometimes I thought she just hit scan all out of sheer habit. One of the attachments, a PDF, had a rather generic title, Project Overview Final. I clicked it, expecting another contractor's proposal summary. The first page was indeed a summary, a detailed cost breakdown for the cottage renovation. My eyes skimmed over the numbers, the line items for new roofing, plumbing, electrical, foundation work. It all looked reasonable, in line with what we'd already discussed. But then I scrolled to the second page, and that's when my breath hitched. It wasn't a contractor's document at all. It was an internal memo marked confidential from a company I didn't recognize. The company name itself was generic enough, Heritage Solutions Group. What wasn't generic was the content. It was an agreement detailing a referral fee of 15% on the total project cost, payable to A. Patel upon the signing of the main construction contract. And not just 15% of the construction contract, but also a separate consultation fee for project oversight and management services, another 10% of the total, again to A. Patel. The total cost of the renovation, according to the contractor Virginia was closest to signing with, was north of $300,000. Do the math. We were talking about something close to $75,000. $5,000 that would be added to the project's cost, effectively inflating it and funneling directly into Amber's pocket. Not a flat fee for her services, mind you, but a percentage-based kickback. And Virginia had no idea. Or did she? My first thought was a surge of heat that started in my stomach and spread up my chest, prickling my scalp. Anger, pure and hot. Then came the cold dread. I reread the document. There was a faint watermark, almost invisible, that linked it to a series of shell companies, all registered in various states, names that sounded legitimate but hinted at a labyrinthine corporate structure designed for opacity. This wasn't some friendly referral bonus. This was a sophisticated, deliberate scheme. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Amber, charming, helpful Amber. The woman who just last week was patiently explaining the benefits of a heat pump to Virginia. The woman who brought homemade lemon bars to the office every Friday. How could she? And how could I have been so blind? My mind raced, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a standard industry practice. No, not like this, not hidden. And not at these percentages, not for a project that Virginia was already struggling to finance. I closed the document, my hand shaking slightly as I clicked away from the email, deleting it from my inbox, then from my trash. I didn't want any trace of it on my computer. A primal instinct, I suppose. My eyes fell on the photograph of Alina on my desk, her easy smile radiating warmth. What would she do? Alina would have known instantly. She had a sixth sense for duplicity. She also had an unwavering moral compass. She wouldn't have hesitated. But I did. I hesitated, because revealing this would blow up everything. Not just the renovation, but Virginia's trust in Amber, in her own judgment. It would be a messy, ugly confrontation, a public accusation, even if just within the family. Virginia, for all her strength, was also incredibly proud and sensitive to betrayal. And if this went public, if Amber was exposed, it would ripple through their nonprofit, potentially damaging the very organization they both served. Amber wasn't just a colleague. She was a major donor liaison for the nonprofit, a key player in their fundraising efforts. A scandal would be catastrophic. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and just stood there staring out the window at the familiar street. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, but I barely registered it. My mind was a battlefield. Do I tell Virginia? Immediately, how do I even present it? Hey Virginia, I know you trust your colleague Amber, but I accidentally stumbled upon evidence that she's planning to skim $75,000 off your cottage renovation, a project you're already mortgaging your future for. It sounded absurd even to me. And what if Virginia didn't believe me? What if she dismissed it as a misunderstanding, or worse, saw it as me interfering where I didn't belong? Virginia could be very territorial, especially about money matters concerning the cottage. She had always handled the finances, never wanting Alina or me to worry. I thought about Amber, her smooth demeanor, her seemingly genuine concern for Virginia's well-being. Was it all a charade, or was this a desperate act born of some financial strain I knew nothing about? People aren't purely evil, my introspective self reminded me. There are always motivations, complexities. This was outright fraud, plain and simple. It wasn't some gray area, it was a clear exploitation of trust and a blatant attempt to defraud. The next few days were a blur of internal debate. I tried to go about my usual routine, but the thought of that email, that number, gnawed at me. I called Virginia to discuss the legitimate bids, trying to sound normal, asking about the progress, about how Amber was helping. Virginia sounded tired but optimistic. Amber's been a godsend, Stephen. Really taking a load off my mind. She's found a couple more contractors and she's vetting them thoroughly. I think we're close to a decision. My stomach twisted. She was walking right into it. I toyed with the idea of anonymous action, sending the document to Virginia from a burner email, letting her discover it herself. But that felt cowardly, and it wouldn't explain how I got it, which would lead to more questions and suspicion. Besides, a part of me recoiled at the idea of being so indirect with Virginia, especially about something so monumental. I considered confronting Amber directly. Amber, I saw the email. What exactly is going on? But then what? Would she confess, deny it, threaten me? I had no proof beyond the deleted email. It would be my word against hers, and given her position and reputation, I wasn't sure who Virginia would believe. And if Amber was as ruthless as this document suggested, she could easily turn it around, accuse me of hacking, of fabrication, of trying to undermine her for some unknown reason. My reputation, built on decades of academic integrity, felt suddenly fragile. The complication was rooted in more than just the money. It was the cultural clash I sensed, or perhaps fabricated, between my traditional, somewhat rigid sense of propriety and what might be seen as a more aggressive, perhaps even ethically flexible business approach. I knew Amber came from a background where networking and leveraging connections were paramount, but this felt different. This felt like crossing a line. Was I being judgmental? Was I applying my own narrow, academic, ethical framework to a world that operated by different rules? No, I decided, stealing is stealing, regardless of cultural context. It's the deceit that truly rankled. I found myself watching Amber more closely when we next gathered at the cottage, just the three of us, for another walkthrough with a potential contractor. She was effortlessly charming, laughing at the contractor's jokes, asking intelligent questions, seemingly indispensable. Virginia leaned on her, figuratively and literally, at one point resting a hand on Amber's arm as they discussed the placement of a new window. I watched Amber's face, searching for a tell, a flicker of guilt, anything, but there was nothing. Her eyes were bright, her smile genuine, her demeanor utterly composed. It made me wonder if she even considered what she was doing wrong, or if she truly believed it was just business. "Stephen, you're looking pensive," Amber said, turning to me, her smile unwavering. "Worried about the cost? Don't worry, I'm negotiating hard. We'll get Virginia the best deal." The words felt like a physical blow, a carefully crafted lie delivered with such practiced sincerity. I managed a weak smile. "Just thinking about all the history this place holds," I mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Virginia, ever perceptive, noticed my discomfort. "Stephen's always been the sentimental one," she said, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. "He sees ghosts in every floorboard." That night, back in my quiet study, I felt the walls closing in. The dilemma wasn't just hypothetical anymore, it was real, pressing, and time-sensitive. Virginia was days, maybe hours, away from signing that contract. If she signed it, the money would be gone, baked into the inflated cost. And once that happened, it would be almost impossible to undo. My mistake was not acting immediately in that first rush of anger and clarity. My mistake was allowing my introspection, my need to analyze every angle, to paralyze me. The silence of my house felt deafening. The weight of this secret, this moral failing of another person that had somehow landed squarely on my shoulders, was crushing. I thought about Virginia's face when she signed the papers, unknowingly signing away a significant portion of her hard-earned savings, driven by a trusting nature that Amber was exploiting. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over Virginia's number. My heart was pounding, a heavy, dull drum in my chest. What to say, how to begin? The words felt like lead in my mouth. I couldn't just blurt it out. I needed a plan. A way to present the evidence without destroying Virginia in the process, and without blowing up the family or their nonprofit. I needed to protect Virginia, but also to understand how this had happened, to see if there was any path to a resolution that didn't involve total devastation. I knew one thing: I couldn't let her sign that contract. But how to stop her without revealing everything? Not yet. The clock was ticking. My finger trembled over the call button. A plan? I needed a plan. Blurted out. No, that was a recipe for disaster, for Virginia's fierce pride to kick in, for her to shut down. I needed leverage, not just the cold, hard fact of Amber's deceit, but a way to deliver it that wouldn't shatter Virginia's world entirely. The immediate goal was to stop the contract from being signed. I took a deep breath, the scent of old paper and dust motes from my study filling my lungs. My mind, ever the analytical engine, began to churn. I couldn't accuse Amber directly without proof she could deny, and id deleted the email. But I remembered the faint watermark, the shell companies. That was my lead. I wouldn't call Virginia to warn her about Amber. I would call her about my *own supposed anxieties, my academic fussiness, as Alina used to call it. I dialed. The phone rang 3 times before Virginia's crisp voice answered, a little tired. Steven. Is everything all right? You never call this late. Virginia, yes, everything's fine, I lied, my voice remarkably steady. Just burning the midnight oil as usual. Look, I've been poring over these contractor bids again. The one Amber recommended, the Heritage Solutions Group affiliate. Something just doesn't sit right with me. A beat of silence. What do you mean, Steven? Amber says they're the most reputable and their bid is competitive. We were planning to sign by Friday. Exactly. I pounced carefully. That's why I'm calling. It's almost too competitive, Virginia, and the clauses around payment schedules are a bit opaque. I know you trust Amber and I do too, but my historian's brain just flags anything that isn't crystal clear. This Heritage Solutions Group they're contracting through, I can't find much about them beyond a boilerplate website. No public reviews, no established history. I think it's just a holding company, a shell. My gut, the one that usually tells me which ancient document is a forgery, is screaming. I could almost hear Virginia's brow furrowing through the phone. She respected my intellect, my academic rigor, even if she sometimes found it exasperating. A shell company? Steven, you're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything nefarious, Virginia, not yet, I interjected, keeping my tone calm, concerned, academic asterisk. But it's a huge investment, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We need absolute transparency. What if something goes wrong? Who do we hold accountable? A shell company could vanish overnight. I think we need to insist on a direct contract with the primary construction firm, not some subsidiary or affiliate. And perhaps, given the complexity, we should engage a third-party legal review. Just a quick once-over from a property lawyer who specializes in construction contracts. My friend, Robert Davies, he owes me a favor. He could do it quickly, confidentially. There was a long pause. I held my breath. This was the gamble. If she saw through my thinly veiled concern, if she dug her heels in about Amber's recommendation, I was sunk. But the idea of a lawyer, a neutral third party, appealed to her sense of due diligence, her need for everything to be just so. Robert Davies, she finally said, her voice thoughtful. He handled Alina's trust, didn't he? Very meticulous. Are you sure it's necessary, Steven? Amber has been so thorough. It's about your peace of mind, Virginia, I insisted gently, and about protecting the cottage, Alina's legacy. This isn't about Amber's thoroughness, which I have no doubt about. It's about the legal structure of a massive financial undertaking. Think of it as an extra layer of insulation, just like we're putting in the walls. She sighed, a sound of weary resignation. All right, Steven, fine, if it makes you sleep better, but tell Robert to be quick. We really need to get this started before the good weather runs out. I'll tell Amber we're delaying the signing by a few days just to get a legal opinion. She might be annoyed, but it's for the best, I suppose. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. Thank you, Virginia, you won't regret it. I'll call Robert first thing in the morning. I hung up, my hand still shaking, but for a different reason now. I had bought time. Now the real work began. 2 weeks later, the air at the family cottage was thick with unspoken tension, far heavier than the lingering scent of lemon polish from our pre-renovation clean. Robert Davies, true to his word, had moved quickly. His report, delivered to me in a discreet, unmarked envelope, confirmed my worst fears and then some. Heritage Solutions Group was indeed a complex web of shell companies, set up primarily to facilitate large-scale, opaque financial transactions. The language of the contract was not merely opaque. It was specifically designed to obscure the exorbitant referral and consultation fees and make them appear as legitimate, integrated costs. Robert had even found a history of similar, though smaller, schemes linked to one of the directors of Heritage Solutions Group, a director whose name, he noted, was remarkably similar to Amber Patel's mother's maiden name. It wasn't outright, undeniable proof that Amber was the beneficiary, but it was enough to make a very strong case. I hadn't shared the report directly with Virginia yet. I was still wrestling with the how. The private reconciliation approach was paramount, but it felt impossible without first shattering Virginia's carefully constructed world of trust. I watched Amber during our next meeting at the cottage. She was still effortlessly charming, perhaps even more so, anticipating Virginia's every need, offering to fetch forgotten tools, praising Virginia's taste in curtain fabrics. Her smile, once radiant, now seemed to me like a carefully constructed mask. I found myself scrutinizing every gesture, every word, searching for the crack in her composure. Virginia, meanwhile, was growing increasingly impatient with the delay. "Stephen, Robert's report was comprehensive, thank you, but I don't quite see what the fuss is about," Shed told me a few days prior, her voice edged with frustration. "He just said the contract was unconventionally structured. It didn't say it was illegal." Amber assures me this is how many high-end renovation firms operate now, given the tax complexities. She's even offered to reduce her *own personal consulting fee to help offset any perceived risk premium from the contractor. She's so dedicated. My stomach had lurched. Amber reducing her personal consulting fee. This was a strategic move designed to deflect suspicion while still securing the bulk of her illicit gains through the concealed referral fees. She was good, too good. This wasn't just a simple backstab. It was a chess game, and I was holding a critical piece but unsure how to play it without sacrificing the queen. The cottage itself seemed to echo my internal turmoil. Every creak of the old floorboards, every draft from a faulty window felt like a judgment. This place, meant to be a sanctuary, a repository of cherished memories, was now tainted by deceit. I realized my own role in this unfolding drama. My initial hesitation, my desire to analyze every angle, had given Amber time to solidify her deception, to weave her narrative of industry standard and tax complexities. My overthinking, Aliner's old critique, had paralyzed me, allowing the problem to fester. I hadn't been an active problem solver. I had been a reactive observer, waiting for clarity that would only come through painful action. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the lake in shades of orange and bruised purple, I found Virginia sitting alone on the screened porch, a half-empty teacup beside her. She looked tired, the lines around her eyes more pronounced. The weight of the cottage renovation, combined with her demanding nonprofit work, was clearly taking its toll. This was my window. I sat down opposite her, the rhythmic chirping of crickets filling the silence. "Virginia," I began, my voice soft, "we need to talk. Not about the cottage renovations, not about contracts, but about something far more important." She looked at me, her gaze weary but sharp. "What is it, Stephen? You've been acting strangely for weeks, like you're carrying the weight of the world." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I have been. Remember that document you accidentally scanned and emailed me a while back? The project overview final from Heritage Solutions Group." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Vaguely, I scanned so much junk." "Why? It wasn't junk, Virginia. It was a detailed breakdown of how Amber Patel planned to take $75,000 off the top of your renovation costs without your knowledge." Her teacup rattled as she set it down, a sharp sound in the quiet. "Stephen, what are you talking about? Are you feeling all right?" Her voice was laced with disbelief, bordering on offense. "Amber is my colleague, my friend. She's been a godsend on this project." "Are you mistaken? You must be." "I wish I were," I said, pulling out a printout of the key pages from Robert's report, which meticulously highlighted the hidden fees, the shell company structure, and the links to Amber's family. "This is Robert Davis Analysis. He specializes in corporate structures. He confirms that this is a deliberate scheme to inflate the cost and channel money to a third party, and the third party, Virginia, is Amber." She picked up the pages, her hands trembling slightly. Her eyes scanned the document, the meticulous diagrams of corporate structures, the highlighted percentages. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale and drawn. She looked up, her eyes wide, wounded. No, Stephen, this is impossible. Amber wouldn't, she couldn't." The words were whispered, a plea rather than a statement. "Virginia," I said, reaching across the small table, wanting to touch her arm but hesitating. "I saw the original email. I deleted it immediately because I didn't know what to do, but I confirmed it with Robert. The referral fee and consultation fee outlined in this document are direct kickbacks. They add 25% to the total project cost. Amber was going to pocket $75,000 of your money you're already struggling to find." She pushed the papers away, her hand shaking. "But why? We're friends. We work together. We've known each other for years." Her voice was hoarse with pain. The disbelief slowly morphed into searing anger, a betrayal so profound it seemed to crack her composure. "She looked me in the eye, Stephen, and she lied. She smiled and lied. All this time pretending to help me, pretending to care about the cottage, about my financial strain. I think it's likely she's under some kind of significant financial pressure herself." "Virginia," I offered, trying to soften the blow, to introduce a shred of nuance to the pure villainy. "People don't usually do something like this unless they feel desperate." Virginia scoffed, a bitter sound. "Desperate? Stephen, she drives a luxury car, lives in a beautiful home, she gives generously to the nonprofit. She's the last person I'd think of as desperate. This isn't desperation, Stephen. This is calculated greed. This is a betrayal of trust on a scale I cannot comprehend." Her eyes, usually so sharp and in control, were now clouded with hurt and fury. This was the moment of character development for Virginia. She wasn't shrinking from the challenge, she was rising to meet it, albeit with profound pain. The reluctant leader was being forced into a new role. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Do we expose her? Go to the police? This would destroy her career, the nonprofit's reputation." "That's the dilemma," I admitted. My initial thought was to blow the whistle, but I considered the ripple effect. The damage to the nonprofit, to your own reputation as someone who brought her in, and the sheer ugliness of a public scandal. Virginia stood up, walking to the edge of the porch, staring out at the darkening lake. Her shoulders were hunched, but there was a stiffness to her posture, a newfound resolve. No, she said, her voice firmer now. No public scandal. Eleanor would have hated that. She always believed in resolving things privately with dignity whenever possible. But Amber cannot be allowed to get away with this. Not with my asterisk money, not with the cottage. A month had passed since that fraught conversation on the porch. The cottage renovation had been put on indefinite hold. Virginia had taken charge, her transformation from reluctant leader to decisive problem solver accelerating with shocking speed. She hadn't confronted Amber directly, not yet. Instead, she had meticulously, patiently unraveled Amber's web. She'd found discrepancies in other nonprofit contracts Amber had managed, smaller instances of inflated costs and dubious vendor choices, all pointing to a pattern. My initial thought that Amber's actions might be an isolated incident of desperation proved naive. This was a practiced, sophisticated deception. I had watched her, admiring her quiet strength, her strategic mind. She didn't shout, she analyzed. She didn't react, she planned. She truly was Eleanor's sister. Then came the day Virginia called Amber for a private meeting at the cottage, ostensibly to discuss the renovation delay and the new insights from Robert Davis' legal review. I was there at Virginia's request, a silent witness. The air was thick with the scent of pine needles and unspoken accusations. Amber arrived impeccably dressed, her smile as charming as ever. She launched into an explanation about the unforeseen complexities of the renovation, about her tireless efforts to find the best deals. Virginia let her talk, her face unreadable. When Amber finally paused, Virginia picked up a small, exquisitely carved wooden bird from the mantelpiece, a gift from Eleanor. Amber, she said, her voice calm, devoid of any anger, this cottage means everything to me. It's a repository of memory, a symbol of family, of trust. She turned, her gaze direct, unwavering, and you have tried to steal from it. Amber's smile faltered, her eyes flickered to me, then back to Virginia. Virginia, I don't understand what you're saying. Her voice was strained, but still attempting composure. Don't insult my intelligence, Amber, Virginia said, her voice still quiet, but with an underlying steel. Stephen found the original email. Robert Davies confirmed the structure of Heritage Solutions Group and its connection to you. I've also found other discrepancies in the nonprofit's accounts that you managed. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding of modern business practices. This was a calculated attempt to defraud me of a significant sum of money and likely to defraud the nonprofit as well. Amber's face drained of color, the practiced composure shattered. Her eyes darted around the room as if seeking an escape. Virginia, please, it's not what it seems. I can explain. There's nothing to explain, Amber, Virginia cut her off. The numbers don't lie, the corporate filings don't lie, your betrayal does. Amber finally broke, her shoulders slumped. I'm so sorry, Virginia, she whispered, her voice cracking. I never meant for it to hurt you. I have massive debts. My husband's business failed secretly. We lost everything. I was desperate. I saw this as a way to get us back on our feet without anyone knowing. A loan, really, that I would pay back eventually once things stabilized. It was a plausible, if self-serving, explanation. The complex motivations of a backstabbing colleague were finally laid bare, not pure malice but a desperate act born of catastrophic financial ruin cloaked in professional deceit. My initial judgment of pure evil softened into a more nuanced understanding of human fragility under pressure. A loan. Virginia scoffed, though the anger was now mixed with a profound sadness. Without my consent, without my knowledge, that's not a loan, Amber, that's theft, and it's fraud. What you've done, Amber, is unforgivable. Amber started to weep, genuine tears streaming down her face. I know it is. I've ruined everything, my career, my reputation, our friendship. Please, Virginia, don't tell anyone. I'll pay it back. Every penny, it'll make it right. Virginia looked at her for a long moment, the silence broken only by Amber's muffled sobs. You will make it right, Amber, Virginia said, her voice firm. But not by paying me back some theoretical money. You will resign from the nonprofit effective immediately. You will provide a full detailed accounting of every vendor and contractor you've brought in over the last 5 years, both for the nonprofit and for anyone you helped privately. I will audit every single one. If I find any further instances of fraud, I will take every legal step available to me, regardless of the consequences for your reputation or the nonprofit. And if I find you've tried to defraud the nonprofit, I won't hesitate to inform the board and the authorities. Amber looked up, her face tear-streaked, but a flicker of surprise and even relief in her eyes. You won't go public. Not if you comply fully, Virginia stated. This is my condition for private reconciliation. You will provide everything I need and you will disappear from my life and from the nonprofit. This is your chance, Amber, to salvage a shred of integrity. This is the only way this is resolved privately. Amber nodded frantically, relief washing over her face, eclipsing the shame. Yes, Virginia, anything, I'll do it. Thank you for this chance. The confrontation was over. Virginia had chosen the path of pragmatic justice, protecting both the family and the nonprofit, while ensuring Amber faced consequences, albeit privately. 6 months later, the cottage still stood, unrenovated for now, but a different kind of restoration had taken place. Amber Patel had resigned from the nonprofit, citing personal family matters. Virginia, with a grim determination, had meticulously gone through all of Amber's past projects, uncovering several smaller but significant instances of similar financial manipulations benefiting shell companies linked to Amber. She handled each one quietly, expertly, recovering funds and severing ties with the fraudulent vendors. The nonprofit, thanks to Virginia's quiet competence, avoided any public scandal. Amber herself had vanished, presumably to deal with her undisclosed financial woes. I sometimes wondered if she truly understood the immense grace Virginia had extended her. The cottage renovation was now being planned anew with a different contractor, one I had vetted exhaustively myself. Virginia was no longer the reluctant leader. She was a formidable force, more assertive, more discerning, her trust harder to earn, but once earned, more profound. Her character had undergone a significant and necessary transformation, forged in the fires of betrayal. She had learned painfully to lead without hesitation, to trust her own judgment above all else. My own perspective had shifted too. I still overthought, still saw the nuances, but I had learned the crucial difference between introspection and paralysis. My initial hesitation had almost cost Virginia dearly. I realized that sometimes the introspective learner needed to transition into the decisive protector. The cultural clash I had mused about, the idea that perhaps Amber's actions were a product of a different, more aggressive business ethic, had proven to be a comforting illusion. Stealing was stealing, deceit was deceit, regardless of background or perceived necessity. It was a stark lesson in the universality of moral transgression. I sat on the porch of the cottage now, watching the first snowfall, dusting the lake and the trees in white. Virginia was inside, poring over blueprints, a different light in her eyes now, not one of weary obligation but of focused determination. We had both been changed by this experience. I had learned to act, to trust my gut, and to accept the messy consequences of confronting uncomfortable truths. Virginia had learned to lead, to protect, and to face betrayal with dignity and resolve. The cottage, once a symbol of childhood summers and shared responsibility, now also represented a crucible, a place where trust was broken and then painstakingly rebuilt. It reminded me that even in the quiet corners of family life, the grand dramas of human nature, deceit, loyalty, forgiveness, and transformation played out with profound intensity. The path to reconciliation wasn't always smooth, and it didn't always involve forgiveness in the traditional sense, but it could lead to a different kind of peace, a quieter understanding, and a stronger, if more guarded, connection forged in the ashes of shattered trust.